Some people celebrate Corowa as the birthplace of Australian Federation. A rare few honour it as the birthplace of the legendary Upton tractor.
Yeah, it's unique, to say the least.
In fact, so unique and so highly esteemed by vintage tractor enthusiasts that some journey from overseas to this little New South Wales town, especially to see one of these rare machines.
You know, there's people all over the world that come to look at them and, you know, people are still amazed by them, yeah.
So for Tractor Tragics, it doesn't get any better than this. 5 Upton tractors in a row. The Henty Field Days in southern New South Wales this year marked its 60th anniversary in style. The organisers tracked down these machines and their devoted owners. This headline attraction was the first time there's been so many Uptons assembled in one spot. So what makes this tractor so special? There's a range of reasons. Its rarity for a start. No more than 3 dozen tractors were ever made. No one's quite sure exactly how many.
Somewhere around that. They obviously didn't have the bookkeeping up to scratch, I don't think.
But it was a world beater, well ahead of its time. Decades after the final machine rolled out of the workshop, it still punches, or at least pulls, well above its weight. The Upton story began with Arthur Upton, who started the family engineering business in Corowa in 1944.
The Second World War finished and there was disposals. They were disposing of used military equipment.
Arthur was a wheeler and dealer with an uncanny knack of repurposing machinery, especially army wartime surplus.
His skill was he could see a use for something that no one else could. So that was his forte.
Especially armoured vehicles.
Initially, he just cut off all the armour that wasn't required, and they had 2 diesel engines, so he'd pull one engine out and just leave one engine in there and built a big scrub rake on the front to clear mallee scrub down there. And then he'd use the other engine and attach a water pump on a skid and sell it as an irrigation pump.
With materials still in short supply in post-World War II Australia, this bush engineering works became skilled at improvising, inventing and manufacturing. In 1962, Arthur Upton built a prototype tractor, the Upton 180, which arose from a simple need.
Everyone wanted to be able to cultivate more or quicker or easier or whatever.
The very first tractor, it was cobbled together over a number of years. They would work on that when they had not much else to do. It wasn't a priority.
Those initial 180 horsepower tractors showed Arthur Upton's entrepreneurial flair with spare parts.
Had a brainwave, let's put some of this stuff together and use it up and get a tractor out of it, and away she went. Sort of amazing things to look at. The big back end on them's unreal.
These are early model Uptons, the 180, manufactured from the mid-1960s. They're made of armoured plate because, incredibly, the gearbox and the rear end were taken from army tanks.
There was variations of the Sherman, the Grant and the Lee's tanks had the same final drive and gearbox parts, all made by Mack in America.
Well, I counted one day 32 Grant tanks in the yard. He decided these big 4-ton transmissions, there wasn't much use for them, so he decided to start building a few tractors just to get rid of the tank diffs. That was the main thing, and he fitted them with the UD engines that he bought from Japan.
The UD was a far superior 2-stroke diesel, and the robust military parts proved to be perfect.
Ones that would tolerate the type of horsepower and the wheel sizes that we wanted to put on them. You still got to bear in mind economy. These parts were there, they were cheap, so we could make the first of the 180 horsepower tractors, we could sell for around £14,000.
And then they only ever built them when someone wanted them. It wasn't, we want to take over the world, it was just, he'd build them as required.
Those early models had extra wide wheels and were a distinctive shade of pink.
Bill Keynes was mixing up some paint in the shed one day in the paint shop, and that's what turned out. And we knew of nothing else that was that colour, so it went on.
The business grew and diversified, from the 1960s making irrigators, notably a travelling type, propelled by the water it was emitting. The firm invented and made every type of rural machinery.
At one stage, he was the biggest employer in Corowa next to the Corowa Hospital, and he nearly always had about 30 men employed, and they were all sort of bush mechanics, and each and every one of them had a forte of some description.
In 1973, a 225 horsepower model emerged, which still had some tank parts, along with some cutting-edge components. By then, Carl Upton had joined the firm, designing and building ever bigger, more powerful tractors, of great appeal to large-scale grain growers.
They were probably 3 times the size of anything on the market at the time. For example, the most popular tractor was a Chamberlain, a 98 horsepower Chamberlain. In 1977, I'd built the HT series, which was 350 horsepower. So here you have a tractor that might weigh 8 tonne, and I've got a tractor that could weigh 20 tonne.
Many thought these distinctive yellow machines, Carl changed the colour scheme, would be a flop because they were simply too big.
It was such a big tractor at the time that not a lot of people, they just thought, oh, well, it's just too big. It's just unmanoeuvrable, just too big for the farm, because it was going out when people had little grey Fergies, and here's this about a 10, 12 tonne tractor.
And the Upton was a big banger that for open country, and probably, well, there would have been a lot more around if circumstances just sort of stopped them making them.
Only 8 HT models were ever made. Production ceased in 1981. By then, similar tractors were being imported at a cheaper price, and the rural economy was going through some tough times. But the last one rolled out 43 years ago, the Upton still stands apart, especially the HT model.
Well, the last one is still the biggest two-wheel drive tractor in the world.
It's a big name if you're a tractor aficionado.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, it did cause a stir because no one's ever done it. And still today, there is no production-built, factory-built tractor that is 350 horse two-wheel drive. Yes, there are big four-wheel drives, but not two-wheel drive.
It still holds world records for its capacity to pull. Carl Upton says it's a case of fundamental physics.
You see, it's very simple. An elephant can pull more than a horse because it's bigger, and a tractor is the same. The bigger and heavier you make them, the more they're going to pull. And of course, you have to take into consideration all the efficiencies of the traction of the tyres and so forth. And on our machine, it all worked very well.
Over time, most of these tractors, sometimes rediscovered gathering dust in a farm shed or stalled in the scrub, have been tracked down and restored by keen new owners. This one, still in use on a farm, was driven here specially for the head display.
The MT 855 model, 1980. This particular one.
This is another the Upton family tracked down and purchased with a plan to restore it. But it'll need a lot of love. Some bush mechanic has made some crude post-factory modifications. Tractor enthusiasts are a passionate type, invariably older blokes, retired farmers, grain growers to be precise, weather-beaten by exposure to the elements and decades of diesel fumes and dust. On the outskirts of town, a couple of dozen such folk gather every Wednesday. Officially the Corowa Vintage Machinery Club, it's mostly called the Tractor Club because everyone here seems besotted with them. It's a kind of men's shed with machinery.
So that's a lot of it. Brains of what the people who invented them originally started from scratch, whereas now they just improve everything. So, and that's part of it. And I don't know, you've got to be a bit silly too, I think, but it's good fun. Technical adjustments.
Bill Petchke owns dozens of old tractors, but his rare, locally made Upton is perhaps his favourite.
Mine's a 180 horsepower one with the 4-cylinder UD and still in its pink colours.
Carl Upton stepped out of the business a decade ago to let sons Paul and Mark take the reins.
I have very fond memories of, tractors in parades down the main street on Australia Day and things like that. And, I'm very proud of my family history in those tractors, yeah.
Upton Engineering still fabricates all manner of things, but irrigation equipment remains the company's mainstay. In the late 80s, the firm built the world's first purpose-built racecourse irrigator. This is the latest version, destined for Caulfield Racecourse in Melbourne. This family has long believed that to engineer its own future, technology is vital.
I've always felt that without technology, really, we're a glorified blacksmith shop. So we've always pushed to be, at least up to speed or better than everyone else in the world, So, we have phone apps and the machines can be fully controlled from your phone anywhere in the world, and they can give reports on how much water you're using on a crop and things like that.
But in times of drought, when water is scarce, business can dry up, quite literally. Like when the Millennium Drought gripped Eastern Australia, forcing the Uptons to venture further afield.
And so, literally, myself and one of the salesmen hopped the plane and went over there and door knocked the entire coast of Western Australia. We did get a lot of work out of that, and that ended up, we do have a depot now in Broome. We have one in Darwin. We have spares in Perth, and we service cans. We do literally do jobs every day Australia-wide. So it has taken me to every state in Australia, and we have hundreds and hundreds of these machines all over the country.
The firm makes irrigators up to 800 metres in length. The ethos of this third-generation business remains the same. Give anything a red-hot go.
There's just this common myth that people say, well, we can't do that in Australia. And to my father's credit, I would have to say, we were never told that you can't do anything. We were probably fed the opposite. So, well, there's a workshop. You can build whatever the hell you want to build. Go and do it. And we did, So we never had that barrier in front of us, and I never had that mentality that we couldn't do anything.
Upton's built tractors to meet a market. That factor remains the same.
People think that you invent something and then go back to the public and sell it, but it's probably driven the other way. We just respond to what customers ask for. So, if someone wants something, yeah, we'll build it.